Hello, world language teachers. Welcome to the first edition of our spring curriculum series. It's World Lang Wednesday, baby. Let's get right into it. I am so excited to be here with you today for something new that I haven't done before, which is a full deep dive series on something really important to the success of your world language program that people ask me about all the time. And I'm here to give you the goods. So if we have never hung out before, I am so happy to be with you. My name is Devin, and I hang out as La Libre Language Learning or La Libre Language Learning online, depending on what language you teach. I was a French and Spanish teacher for 5 years in the South Carolina area, and now I do curriculum work full time. So this is part of a series that I'm doing this spring to help teachers understand how getting into the nitty gritty of your curriculum is going to help every aspect of your classroom become easier. And I don't know about you, but spring, especially leaning more into the summer, was really the time that I reflected on how the year was going and what could be done for next year. And I don't know about you, but I'm like already ready to jump to next year. So this I felt like would be a really nice, invigorating topic for us to dive into. Now, we're going to be doing a weekly class, so come on in and join me. And if you are in here, I'm going to check and make sure that everything is going well. Can you let me know in the comments where you are watching from so that I know who's here and who's hanging out? I'm so excited to be with you. Now, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to jump into the 9 most common mistakes that departments of one, I was one as well, teachers and departments, I was in that category too, and districts or even states make when they are looking at curriculums and what they need to do in order to revise it and have the most successful program possible. Let me know in the comments if you can hear everything and where you're coming from today. I'm going to check on here and make sure that everything's looking good. I see it. Hello, Horsham, PA. You're lying. Dude, I grew up really close to you. Do you know Doylestown? That's my hometown. Oh my gosh, Virginia. That's crazy. That is crazy. Jennifer, you're coming in from DC. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm really glad to have you. All right, y'all. Let's get into what we got going on today. All right, so I'm gonna calm down here and share my screen because I got cool stuff for you today. So how many of you, when you think about your curriculum, how many of you are excited to take apart your curriculum and work on it bit by bit? And how many of you are like, oh, God, no. Which camp do you fall in? Tell me which one you're in. Are you like, yes, curriculum, give me a thumbs up. You're like, yeah, I'm pumped, I'm jammed. Or give me a like, if this is like not your thing, but you know it's important. Let me know what camp you fall in. People usually fall in one or the other. Let me see what we got here. Yardley? No, you are not. Yardley, oh my God, that is so close to me. Jennifer, that's crazy. What's the source of the info that you'll be sharing? Resource, website, etc. Jennifer, I'm going to be sharing with you the experience that I have had in a couple of different ways and some websites that you can also go along with to help you. So you'll see what I mean by that in a second. Let's go ahead and dive in. I'm using a tool called Canva. If you've never seen this before, it's literally my favorite thing in the whole world. It's really easy to use. Okay, let me see. Oh my gosh, we got so many comments here. Let me see what we got here. All right, so Jennifer saying, sounds good. Yeah, all right, good. Virginia's like, yes, she's so into it. Yes, I'm into that too. Michigan, Ernesto, sea bienvenido. I'm so excited to have you here. Too much in curriculum and not student friendly. Jennifer, I hear you for that. Virginia's like, I can't find the thumbs down symbol. That happens to me all the time with emojis. I only have 10 that I really use all the time. I love it, but we go back and forth about what to do and it keeps changing. Oh, you say it keeps changing? That's very funny. Guess what number 4 is? Yeah, I feel you on that. All right. Oh, and it keeps changing due to COVID. Yeah. So that's another thing. That's for real another thing. So we're going to talk about that because that's real. That's a thing. All right. Yeah. Let's jump on into it. So Wool Lang Wednesday. What on earth is this? Who's this crazy lady talking to you? I am here to make sure that our profession has the best curriculum resources possible. Because I don't know about you, but when I was in the classroom, I signed up to teach. I did not sign up to be a curriculum wizard, even though that's what I ended up being. I love curriculum. I'm one of the teachers who absolutely loves curriculum, and I loved tinkering with my curriculum, and it became my career. But I honestly wish that I didn't have to do that in my classroom because it takes so much time. It takes so much time and energy. And it honestly is not what you signed up to be here for, right? Like you signed up to teach. But without a good curriculum, you can't do the job that you would like to do. So we're going to get into what that really means today. And that's why I created this series that we're going to deep dive into it. So you should come hang out with me every Wednesday. It's going to be at the same time, except for next week, but we'll get over that. We'll talk about that schedule in a second. But come hang out with me every Wednesday. I've been doing Wool Lang Wednesdays since December, but this is the first time that we're doing a full series because curriculum is beast. It's a thing. So we're going to dive into one singular aspect of curriculum each week. And this first class is to kind of get our feet wet a little bit, get a little bit of some of those things out in the open about where curriculum really can start to drive us crazy and how we can get over that a little bit. You feel me on that? I know you do. So come hang out with me every Wednesday if you're around. And if you're not, you can, of course, always watch the replay, like many of you are. So hello, my future friends in replay life. Put hashtag replay in the comments below so I can say hi to you because I'm really glad you're here. Who am I? Hey, I'm Devin, if we've never hung out before. I was a French and Spanish teacher for 5 years in the public school world, and I hang out in high school. That's where I like to hang out. I love teenagers. I do. They were always my favorite age group. Even though I'm certified K-12, I loved teenagers. And I live in South Carolina. Even though I told y'all I'm originally from Doylestown, PA, I've been living in Charleston for 12 years now. And I've done it all in the years that I was in the classroom. I did rural, one stoplight town, a small school in terms of a high school. It was about 500 students. I've done medium and large, and I've done urban environments, and I've done semi-suburban. I don't really know. It was kind of like outskirts of the city type deal. And I've seen a lot of different things in my brief experience in the classroom, but curriculum really became my jam. Like it was the thing that I was always asked about and the thing that I always raised my hand to do extra work on. Like all the stuff where they're like, can you help out with the car line? I was like, no, go away. But when they asked for help with the curriculum and tweaking rubrics and assessments, I was like, yes, pick me, always me. My first experience with curriculum came with like many of you. So put in the comments if this is you. Put Department of One if this is you, because that's the thing. I started as a Department of One. I didn't want to be, but I taught at a small school. And so I was the only Spanish teacher. There was another teacher at Spanish too, but even though she was a lovely human being, she helped me out a lot. She and I did not teach at all the same way. So I really was a Department of One. And I was the only Spanish teacher in the district besides her. So I was very much a Department of One, and we had nothing. So I had a 20-year-old textbook with pages coming out of the spines. How many of you can relate to that? And a few worksheets here and there. Those of you who are on my newsletter know the infamous butterfly story. That's where that experience comes from. It was all conjugation life all day, every day. So I created my own curriculum because my kids were not having it. And I knew that I would not have a good experience unless I did something about it. And it ended up working out really well, except for that I worked 70 hours a week, which was terrible. And then I worked into the district level when I moved schools we had a district-wide curriculum that was transitioning to proficiency, like many people are right now. Everybody knows that proficiency is important, but we're not really quite sure where to go or exactly how to make it happen on a day-to-day basis in our classroom. So that's where a lot of you are probably here, right? Is how do I make this happen? And that's what I did at the district level. Is I was hired by my district to, like, from a team of teachers to work on the curriculum and make it more proficiency based when I moved there. And then the last experience that I had is that I worked on it at the state level. I was one of the consulting teachers for the French team for the state of South Carolina with the first proficiency driven ever. It was really exciting. And it's a content-based, unit-based curriculum. And you'll be able to get a link to this at the end of class. I'll show you exactly where you can find it. So stay tuned for that, because it's a free resource that is awesome and you should all be looking at to help you guide through your curriculum decisions. But I worked on the state level and learned a lot about what curriculum really should look like, especially in the whole span of the K-12 environment. And now I create curriculum full time for my customers, and I do curriculum consultations, audits to help people get where they would like to be on their proficiency journey. But I'm tell you what my favorite thing is. Can I tell you what my favorite thing is? It's teaching teachers how to create their own, because I think that is the most useful skill that you can have, is figuring out how to create your own curriculum, because you get asked to do it all the time. You get asked to do it all the time as a world language teacher. So here is our first class out of many to come for our spring series on 9 common world language mistakes that I see and what you can do instead. Because the beautiful thing about these mistakes is that, surprise, everybody makes them. Everybody makes them. Everybody's done at least one of these, and you're probably doing one of these right now. I know I have made all of them that I'm about to show you today. And the great news is, though, is that once we identify them, we can move on. We can move on with our lives and we can do better. When you know better, you do better. Here's some things that I want you to keep in mind as we move through this class, though. This is a long game. It's for real a long game, okay? You cannot have a beautiful shaped curriculum in 1 year of your class. Ask me how I know. I tried to do it so many times and it's not enough. It is not enough time. You need at least 3 to 5 years to see if your curriculum in a school setting is going to work for you. And for, especially if you have a team of teachers, I mean, you can maybe figure out in like 2 years if it's something that's going to work. But why you need that time is because curriculum takes a butt ton of time. It really does. It takes a few years to refine as well. So you could maybe create it in a small amount of time. I think you can whip up a curriculum map in less than 4 hours. You really can. And I have a workshop. If you're interested in that, I have a workshop that shows you how to do it, because you can. But a curriculum is really the entire complex web of your content as well as your assessments. And that takes a few years to refine. It takes a long time to create a good one. And world language teachers, if you're like me, you maybe had a 6-week course in your undergraduate study learning how to create curriculum, and the rest of it you learned on the fly, on the job, working in a curriculum. You're an accidental expert. Most people, like my French teacher colleague across the hallway at one of the high schools I used to work at, she was working on her master's in curriculum and in unit design. It was a master's degree. Some people have master's degrees in this material. And the funny part is that she never used it though. But it's a very large beast to try and tackle on your own. So please give yourself grace if your curriculum is very frustrating to you. I got to say months now. It's been 3 months since Practical and Comprehensible. That's wild. So if you're new to my ecosystem, we did a conference in January. And at the end of the conference, I asked teachers to talk about what are some frustrations with your curriculum? Like, how's it going for you? And 100 teachers responded. And in those comments, a lot of the things that people said was that they're too busy to work on curriculum. Of course. But here's why we need to focus on this. Why curriculum? Why curriculum? It's one of 3 big stresses in a world language teacher's life right now. In the land of COVID, these are the 3 things that Bertha Delgadillo, she talks about this all the time. Like people go to her for relationships because that's what she's an expert on, and engagement. And other people in my field as well. Like these are the things that they tell me, especially when I was collecting speakers for that conference. These are the 3 things that people were really having pain points on in their classroom: engagement, relationships, and curriculum. Tell me in the comments which one of those is your big thing right now. Which one of those is your big stress? And maybe you have another one because things are different since I did that survey. So are you number 1, engagement, number 2, relationships, or number 3, curriculum? Which one is really like when you do a gut check, you're like, this is driving me crazy. Here's why, while you're putting those in the comments though, here's why I think that curriculum is a really, really smart investment in a little bit of your time. This is not something that's going to take a lot of your time. When you invest in the foundational decisions of your classroom, instead of day-to-day decisions, which is along the lines of you're relying on good quality systems instead of your day-to-day motivation to keep things going in your class, the way that they should, everything about teaching gets easier. The better my curriculum was, the better my teaching was, because the more energy I had to focus on the things that are hardest about teaching. Managing a safe classroom environment, which means, of course, that everybody's needs are met emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the things. And especially in this new environment that we are in, that you have so many other extra stresses on your plate. And like you said, it's getting changed all the time. That curriculum takes out of your head the daily decision work of what the bleep am I going to teach today? And why am I teaching it? And why should my kids care about it? Which I know that pain because I have felt it almost every day teaching. But the better my curriculum was, the less days that was an issue. Because when you have this guiding structure of a curriculum, because that's really all curriculum is, it's the structure that you choose to follow, you have this new confidence to make decisions quickly. You have room for creativity because it eliminates that daily decision fatigue. Hello, Department of One. That was my biggest thing. My last year teaching, I was a Department of One, and I had a lot of knowledge about how to create a curriculum. So I invested most of my time before my kids got into my classroom working on curriculum and establishing classroom routines. Like those were the big 2 for me. Everything about teaching got a lot easier for me. Everything. Also, I strongly argue that the reason you should put some time into focusing on curriculum is that curriculum lets you focus on what you're here to do. Teach. You're here to teach. You're not here to make daily decisions about what the content of your class should be or how you should be assessing things. Like honestly, in a perfect world, my stepmom is an instructional designer in the corporate world, and her teachers, like I don't even know what you call it because I'm not in the corporate world, but her teachers, they don't create the materials. They don't curate the materials. Like everything is provided for them because in her words, their job is to teach, right? So in an ideal world, this is not a part of your job that you should be spending a ton of focused time on every single day. But since it is something that is a part of the world language teacher's toolbox, because we're just that freaking good. Like we know how to do it. We're good at curriculum because we have to, because a lot of the materials that we have are subpar. So we understand how to make something good on the fly and how to navigate through a year on the fly, especially with a lot of the changes that we've got. So when you are focusing on curriculum and how to make your curriculum better, as well as if you're a person who doesn't really love the whole idea of curriculum, I feel you on that, then having a little bit of knowledge about where the focus should be in on your curriculum, you can have the confidence in department meetings to advocate for what your department needs and what needs to happen so that you can focus on teaching. That's where curriculum really gives you a lot of power. Now, before we even get into all the things, first, let me check these comments, and I want you to read this real quick because now you have a little bit of work to do. Okay, because as fun as it is to just hang out, because I love hanging out with you, we're setting an intention now. We got an action plan. So let's do it. All right, what do we got? 70-hour week, Jennifer. Dude, we've all been there. It's terrible. It is not, it's bad. So true. Ooh, state curriculum. Yeah, it was awesome. You're always creating. Yeah, Jennifer, without a good curriculum, you'll always be on that creation wheel, which is rough. Relationships is for you, number 2, Virginia. Yes. Jane's on the curriculum train. Hi, Jane. Thanks for coming and joining me again. Ernesto, yeah, I know you're on curriculum. I know you're on that curriculum train. Jennifer, you're funny. Exactly, says Virginia. I feel like the relationships are hardly there because the curriculum is yes. Virginia, you should come and help me teach this class because the curriculum is fluid and constantly changing. Yeah, you know what that does for your students? That gives them a feeling in your class like, what am I going to experience every day? They have this, I call it academic anxiety when they walk in the door of like, what are we going to do every day? Without structure, there's no room to breathe and for your students to be creative. If I felt strong about what I was teaching each day with the virtual and hybrid kids, the relationships would be better. Absolutely. Who here can relate with what she's saying with that? Absolutely. That is so true. I felt the same way when I started teaching asynchronously last March with my students when we first went into quarantine, and my curriculum had to get thrown out the window, of course. And I thought to myself, I can't, like, how am I going to focus on any kind of relationship building with students when I'm just trying to figure out what to put in front of their Google Classroom every day? Like, you shouldn't have to make that choice. If you invest a little bit of time in curriculum, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but if you invest a little bit of time in curriculum, or you can better advocate for a better curriculum for your school or department, if you're in that position, if you're not a department of one, then you can spend more time working on relationships and what matters and what's not really your job. I wish materials for teaching were provided to us. Clap that up. That's a thing. Don't we all? Le DELF, A1 et A2. Calendrier, révision, lecture et conversation. Is that, Anne? Dites-moi, is that what you're focusing on in your curriculum right now? Jane, me. Cool. All right. Oh, are you telling me what stresses you out about your curriculum? Because tell me that. That's a thing too. I would love to know that. Okay. So now that we're ready and I've got caught up with my peeps, set your intention and your action plan. I'm a huge fan of a woman named Marie Forleo. She is a business and life leader. And my favorite quote from her is that insight without action is useless. Now, what I want to make sure that you do here is that you set right now the idea of what's one thing that you are going to do after this class. Because what are we trying to get out of our time together? Time is your absolute most valuable asset in the world. Not money, not fame, not my amazing hair that my hairstylist is literally, she's a wizard. She's very talented. I got a new shade this week and I'm really excited about it. But my hair is not my most valuable asset. My time is. So what are you going to do this week since you are investing time with me right now? I know this class is free and they'll always be free, but you're investing a lot of time right now. Okay. You got things to do and places to be. So what's your action plan after this? What's the one thing that you're going to do after you learn what the 9 most common mistakes are? And I'm going to show you how to fix them. So tell me, what do you think? And we'll be talking about it. Yep. Okay. So Jennifer, I'll give you that name after the class. She's amazing. You're going to love it. Okay. Oh, good, Anne. All right. Let's get into this. Okay. Now, before we start, real quick, when is the best time to work on your curriculum? I teach about curriculum throughout the year because I do think it's important. And I also think that there are better things to do at certain times throughout the year. I was always a person who was revising my curriculum, but I wouldn't advise diving into and pulling apart your curriculum at all times of the year. Right now, The time of this recording is March 24th. So for my school calendar, school is over in my neck of the woods August 20th. So we just finished third quarter and starting fourth. For me, this was the time when my department would get together and we would start saying, okay, take notes on everything that's going on. Start with reflection. Start now with reflection. Where do you need to go? Like when you think about your curriculum, where are the biggest pain points for you? Oh, I feel you. Okay, so getting students speaking in French and Spanish. I couldn't have done it online without Zoom breakout rooms. Oof. Yeah, that's real. And people have been talking about the breakout rooms and how powerful they are. They're awesome. They are really awesome. Yeah, and getting students speaking in French and Spanish. There's also things that you can do in your curriculum that help to facilitate those types of activities better. So now that you've got that note, that's a really good note to keep in mind as well for if you want to focus more on speaking the next year. I've done that before. My fourth year teaching, I noticed that I had kind of dropped the ball on speaking. So I wanted to focus on speaking the last year that I was in the classroom. I didn't know it at the time, but that year I decided speaking is going to be my top focus. And so I organized everything in my curriculum around speaking skills for my ones and twos. So just keep notes for now and make changes as you go because it's a long game. I also know and wanted to start the spring series because this is a time that a lot of people are starting to make revisions because they're thinking about next year. I mean, it's the Ides of March. It's a long time to be in your classroom. There's not a lot of breaks except for spring break, and spring break is always too short. So this is a good thing that helps keep you moving forward into next year and keeping you positive. But here's some things that you can do. Work with your current curriculum or your textbook format, whatever you're working with. Adapt it to fit your needs throughout the year if you're watching this class like way down the road. Or this is what I used to do staggered focused work throughout the year on PD days. So when you get really good and really quick at grading and you eliminate a lot of unnecessary assessments like I did, you'll have a little bit more time on your hands for PD days. Don't fill it with things like reorganizing your supply closet, like I have done many times to avoid work on your curriculum instead. Because what you can do is you can look at each unit map and all the things, all the assessments. You can do that now, take notes, and then make notes for what you want to do. And then when the new year rolls around, you'll really have something beautiful. The best time to really dig in, sink your teeth in a curriculum is the end of the year and before the new year starts, but you can also really do it at any time because it's a lengthy process. Okay, here we are. We're into the first one. Who's done this? Who's done this? Who's guilty? Raise your hand. You probably all are at some point. I know I've been many a times. Mistake number one when working on curriculum is obsessing over assessments. Oh, it's our favorite. Obsessing over assessments. You know why? Because it's easy to control. It's easy to control, it's easy to fix, it's easy to talk about, and it's easy to standardize. But here's why obsessing over assessments is not going to make your curriculum as strong as you think it is. Do this instead. Obsess over instruction. Obsess over contact hours, meaning how much interaction time do you actually have with your students right now? Because it is very different than what you are used to. Obsess over your lesson quality, which is going to be dictated by your overall curriculum umbrella. Obsess over resource quality and access to resources. What's the difference between these two? Those over there for the do this instead side are the systematic daily representations and steps that will get you to your goal of having better assessments. An assessment is something, if you were like me, you would do maybe once every week or every 2 weeks in a block class for formative assessments like quick speaking checks and things like that. And then maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 5, a big assessment to check how students were doing in a public school setting. It doesn't happen often enough for it to be the be all end all of your curriculum meetings. It doesn't happen enough to truly indicate the success of your curriculum. What is really going to show how well your curriculum is happening is the enduring understandings that you have, which is the end goals that your students are going to come out of your unit with, the vocabulary list that you're using, or the content that you're using, whatever word you want to use for that. And most importantly, the lesson quality that gets you there every day. I want you to think of it this way. You can have a goal or a test of losing weight, and your test of losing weight is doing measurements and weighing yourself maybe once a week. That's your assessment. Okay, you can obsess over different ways to do that, and different ways that would actually like get you the most accurate measurement, like maybe getting a new scale or maybe measuring different parts or whatever. But that's not actually going to make you lose weight. What makes you lose weight is the stuff you do every day, the things that you're eating, how much water you're drinking. I'm really proud of myself because I already hit my water goal for today. Yes. And the exercise that you're actually achieving. Obsess with this over the systems, not how you're assessing how the system works. Because that is truly the mark of your successful curriculum. Mistake number 2. Don't put baby in the corner. Stop putting culture in the corner. Stop it. Culture is your content. Culture is your curriculum. Now, before we go any further, let's just say that this is the number one thing that I was guilty of. So it's really easy to do. It's so easy to do because you get so focused on making sure that your students are able to produce language that you forget. I don't know if this true for you, because this is every single world language teacher that I've ever talked to has had this problem. And if you don't have this problem, come and teach us. Come and teach us your ways. But what happens so often is that your language output goals, there's too much in your curriculum for what you want your students to be able to do. And you also often forget that the way to get there is not just through isolated mini cuentos, like little stories or whatever it might be, or speaking activities or speaking assessments. Like culture is your content. Culture is the vehicle for you to teach. Like the more that I used, for me, the way that I cheated and went around this is I started using songs to teach my high frequency verbs in my French class. And it was the best move I ever made because I was using authentic texts, and all of the verbs were in the actual native speaker's voice. And they were also usually talking about something cool or interesting or controversial going on in the Francophone world. So it was a triple threat. And when I started using materials like that, I had to do a lot less work, and I stopped putting culture in the corner, which was also better. If this is something that has been plaguing you forever, like it plagued my department of 16 of the strongest teachers I've literally ever met, shout out to my people. This depends highly on the quality of resources that you have available to you. So if this is something going on in your curriculum right now, brush it off. It's okay. It has a lot to do with the materials available to you and what's in your textbook, if you're using a textbook, what's in your packaged curriculum, if you're using a packaged curriculum, and what's available at your school. Like this doesn't have much to do with you, but it is something that we can all work on and something that we can all work towards. Who is here thinking that like, okay, this is something I need to work on? Let me know. Culture, baby. Yep, it's real. Yes, water goals, it's a thing. All right, let me check out what we got in here. Are most of you teaching all year long? We've gone to quarters, 2.5 hour classes each day. And that is a crime. That is truly a crime. That is, wow, too long. Teaching 90 minutes per class on a trimester basis. Still meeting my new students this week. I will tell you that I prefer 90-minute classes. I do. I've done it both ways. I prefer block, but trimesters, that's interesting. Let us know how that's going. And if it's not going well, that is okay. That is completely okay. All right, Virginia says, the Spanish teacher and I are definitely more culture-based now, and it's made life easier and more interesting for the kids. I'm so glad that you said that, Virginia, because the other thing about culture and stopping to put culture in the corner is that I want you to think about for a second. Why did you choose to teach French, Spanish, Chinese, German, Why did you choose to teach that language? Because I guarantee you that you could just as well go down the hall and teach history or teach English, science, math, depending on like where your strengths are, because you have everything in your toolkit to be an amazing teacher. I know that because you're here. You have everything in your toolkit, but why'd you choose to teach a language? Probably because you fell in love with the culture at some point. Probably because you fell in love with the language learning process at some point, and your students deserve the same experience. Culture is what makes people fall in love with languages. It's what makes the work worth it. So don't rob your students of that experience. I know it's very much easier said than done because I've been there. Like putting culture in the corner is really easy to do. Look for good resources. Look for good resources. I've got you if you need it. Let me know what you're working on and I will help you or direct you to people who have good things. All right, mistake number 3. This is my favorite. This is my favorite because this is a really easy thing for you to switch and turn off in your classroom right now. And it's the easiest pathway to 90% target language. It is the easiest pathway. Mistake number 3 is trying to prepare students for certain communicative tasks. What do I mean by that? We need to prepare our high school students for going on a trip. So we need to make sure that they know how to ride a bus. We need to make sure that they know how to order in a restaurant. We need to make sure that they know how to write a letter to a pen pal. Okay, that's all very valid if your students are traveling, but take a reality check right now if you live in America and you're teaching middle schoolers and high schoolers. The vast majority of them are not going to travel. I know, shed your bitter tears now. It's really sad. I know, I don't like it either. But you know what they do have access to? A world of cultures right in their friggin' environment, as well as, hello, your classroom. Your classroom is the communicative task. Everything about your classroom and your students' lives should be expressed in the target language whenever possible, ideally 90%. Because why are we constantly preparing students for the future, for something that's coming? This is their life. This is their experience right now. Like, hablemos de eso. Like, why aren't we talking about that? You can meet people from the target culture at any time, but you're missing the ever-present opportunity to talk about students' lives, their experiences, their opinions about what they're experiencing right now. That is what makes class relevant and juicy and interesting. My students' absolute favorite class that they ever experienced was the social justice lesson that I did the first week of school with French students. And then another one that I did 6 weeks later, and it was almost entirely in the target language from the native speaker's perspective using that song. And the discussion we had about the social justice issue was definitely mostly in English because we were 6 weeks into French 1, but all the stuff that they did to describe it was in French, in very, very simple French. And you can do that too. Like what's happening right now in your class is interesting and valid. And you can structure your curriculum to give students the tools that they need to talk about what's going on in their lives right now. Like, for example, like I like this picture a lot because it's talking about, being a YouTuber and that kind of thing. Teach your students the word suscríbete a mi canal. The only reason I know that phrase is because I watch a bunch of Spanish channels on YouTube. That's help them experience life in your target language. It's much more exciting. Mistake number 4. So we talked about this, right? Who's got feelings about this? Because I have a lot of feelings about this. Mistake number 4 is constantly changing the curriculum. Stop it. Stop it. This happens to world language teachers all the time. And we're so fatigued. We're so fatigued. We're so over it. Dude, when I came to a meeting in my district to present the new state curriculum for South Carolina, people were not excited about it. They were so over it, even though that curriculum is beautiful. You know why? Because the curriculum had been changed 4 times in the past 5 years. How exhausting is that? How exhausting is that? You don't even have time for a good thing when it just keeps changing on you. And you know as well as I do that without anything to build on, you're never going to get buy-in from teachers, let alone students. So constantly changing the curriculum, even if your curriculum has flaws, is a bad idea. Stop it. Who's experienced this before? Put in the comments below if you have experienced mistake number 4, because it's rough. I've worked in pretty much the same county, but at 3 different schools. I've had a different curriculum every time. Why? It's nuts. So let me know what you're thinking for this one. Okay, so number 5, trying to cover everything about a topic. This is really, 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 really endemic to the world language community, but honestly, I think just teachers in general. When we're teaching about clothing, our first instinct is let's go ahead and show students every possible piece of clothing that they could ever come across or need, or at the very least, the most common. But something important to remember is that students will only master about 10 words per lesson, and you still have to review and revise and recycle those terms a lot. So that's vocab words and functional chunks. So this is the thing I want you to try instead. What if you personalized your vocab list like crazy? Go with the basics, the absolute basics to get them started, and then ask them to personalize by what are they wearing every day? Like, for example, if a student walks in dressed like this to your classroom, teach them or ask them to look up, that's another activity they can do, the word for necklace, sweater, and the pants that I'm wearing, something along those lines. Personalize like crazy. And you can cut down a lot of your vocabulary list by doing this. Having too much inside of your unit map, your unit guide, your vocabulary assessments, all that stuff comes from this need that we as teachers, we need to cover everything, but it's quite the opposite. We are not the keepers of information for our students anymore. And honestly, we never have been. Students don't need us for information. They need us for sequence and organization. So release that from your repertoire. They don't need you for words, okay? They have word reference for that. They don't need you. Most likely they're using Google Translate anyways. They don't need you for that. What they need you for is how to use those words to talk about what they're experiencing every day, like what they're wearing. What they need you for is doubt when they come across that time where they're like, I just freaking can't remember this word and I need your help. What they need you for is ways to facilitate interesting and exciting ways to recycle the same 10 words so that they get it by the end of those 3 lessons that you're working on so that you can move on to something else. Add in recycled terms and do more novels if you can. Novels are really the secret to vocabulary acquisition. They're amazing. And if you're in really, really low levels in terms of age, then you can work a lot with reading materials that are shorter. Okay, this one's real important. Mistake number 6. We've all done it, but let's move on. Becoming an accidental tourist teacher. Becoming an accidental tourist teacher looks like this. It's when you are following the units of a textbook where you have surface level culture that is represented from maybe different countries around the world. And you're going to Morocco one month, and then you're going to Tunisia the next month. And then the month after that, you're going to look at a specific group, and maybe you're even following like the months of the calendar being like, okay, it's March, we're going to do Women's History Month. But here's what can happen when you become a tourist teacher and when also your students are becoming tourists through this, is that if you're only showing women's history during March, it's saying pretty loud and clear to all of the women in your class, young women in your class, that Francophone women are only important in March, or that they only really exist during this part of the year and that like they're special. And the same thing occurs during Black History Month. The same thing occurs during Asian History Month. And the same thing will also occur if you're doing any type of just surface level cultural experiences of showing students maybe just what cafe culture is like in France and going through monuments and things like that. Like students know that that's really surface level, that that's very whitewashed and very PC. What students want to experience at all age groups and at all levels is a really profound and real experience of the world. This has very far-reaching and profound implications for your students as humans as well as your curriculum. It gives your curriculum all kinds of depth and interest. Your students want to have conversations about identity. You are teaching a culture. You are uniquely qualified as a world language teacher to talk about things like social justice and cultural identity, no matter your own cultural identity. What do I mean by that? You don't also have to be an expert on any of those things. All you have to do is be comfortable with being uncomfortable in providing your students some resources to generate the conversation themselves and to help guide it where it needs to go in a way that your students are learning how to think, not what to think. So representation should be your focus every day for diverse perspectives and communities and age groups, as well as cultural origins and perspectives. Okay, so it's not just about making sure that different races and ethnicities and genders and sexual orientations are throughout your curriculum. It's far more than that, in that we need to broaden into every single way that a human can be expressed in this world is also seen in your classroom, because you're teaching a culture. So you're in an even more important position than I think than other teachers are. That's at least the way that I felt, is that our class is about cultural tolerance and empathy. So why not take advantage of the unique skills that we have as teachers living in that world every day? Mistake number 7. I couldn't help myself with this joke, but the teach it and quit it. The teach it and quit it. This is when you are looking at content and you teach it and then it's gone forever. You have a unit that's all about transportation, and then those transportation things never come back. You have a unit that's all about past tense. If you're teaching Spanish 2, this happened to me every year, every curriculum that I ever taught in. You're teaching a unit on Spanish 2 and you're doing past tense, and you do it for weeks and it's grueling and it's awful, because that's not at all how you should teach Spanish tense. And then they never see it again. And then you somehow move on to prepositions and somehow it's just never comes back. So recycle content. This also comes from the eternal problem of having too much content in your curriculum. If you have too much content in your curriculum, this will be a problem for you. You will teach it and quit it. So make sure that this is not a thing that happens for you. Allow students to reinforce important high frequency verbs in lots and lots of different ways by constantly bringing back the content that you have already taught. I mean, just think about what happens to students over the summer. That's happening to them all the time. If you have 9 weeks between when you last taught this unit and when you last taught this unit, it's intense. It will also happen if you overemphasize assessment, because if you're like me and you were in a school at various points where you had to just get out those vocabulary quizzes, you're teaching 40 or 50 words at a time and then they're just gone. So here's a way that you can get beyond this. What if you recycled content and it was required? We noticed that at the school that I was working on, is we had those vocab assessments all the time. It was very overemphasized. So what we did to combat it is we decided, let's make sure that recycling content is a required part of what we do. So in our curriculum design, and this is how you can help with mistake number 7, is we recycled certain terms that also were relevant to that unit. So for example, if we're doing personal care, like morning routines and things like that, we recycled all the clothing vocabulary that we had already taught, and some things about like where things are in your room for prepositions, so that all that stuff was coming back and students would have to demonstrate that they still remembered how to do it. Also, a way that you can get away from the overcrowding that happens really often in curriculums is go at your students' pace, but push them maybe 10% faster than they would like to go. Because I don't know about you, but high schoolers, like, they'll chill all day long. So go a little bit faster than they would like to go, and that will allow for really good ZPD. Then you're pushing them a little bit, but you're at a comfortable pace. This one is really easy to fall into, and I didn't realize it was a thing until Bill Van Patten taught me about it. But now that I see it everywhere. Mistake number 8 is teaching and assessing content-heavy words. Content-heavy words. What do I mean by that? Content-heavy words are things like nouns and sometimes adjectives that have a lot of meaning and are really easy to teach. Things like dog and purple sweater, laptop, globe, backpack, hair. Those are all content heavy words, and novices love those. But think about, what do your students actually need to accomplish communicative tasks? Because it's not just content words. What they really, really need is the list of Sweet 16 verbs, and they need them in all 3 tenses. They also need connector words like behind, forward. Well, those are prepositions, but connecting words like in, out, those types of things. To get you started on this, I suggest that you consult the 100 most frequent words list, and you can find this by typing in 100 high frequency words. 100 high frequency words from any language. If you compare them, they're almost the same. I know in French and Spanish, they're almost the same. And in English, they're pretty close too, but there might be some slight variations, but they're almost the same. But something that you will find too for number 9, and the last one that we've got here, is that your 100 high frequency words will also include various tenses. So this is mistake number 9. Basing your curriculum map on a very neat linear view of grammar. This means you've got everything organized by, okay, we're going to learn masculine and feminine first. Excuse me, Chinese and Japanese teachers, but I'm going from my French and Spanish background here. We're going to teach masculine and feminine words. Okay, now that they've got that down, even though those are late acquired, by the way, now that they've got that down, we're going to move on to, okay, let's teach present tense. And we're only going to teach regulars, even though they don't use them as much. The reason that verbs are irregular is because they've been used the most in speech and changed the most in speech. Regular verbs are regular because they're not used as much linguistically. So your irregular verbs actually should be taught first. They should be taught first. So then you go into, okay, well, we need to do past tense now. You should have some past tense expressions in there first. I will tell you this, that I had a linear view of grammar like almost the entire time that I was teaching in terms of the curriculum that I was working on. And I fought tooth and nail to try and change it, but I couldn't get anybody behind it. I really couldn't. So you're seeing a little bit of my fire in here, that I'm upset that I couldn't get anybody to change their mind on this. But there is so much research behind this. And if you are a research junkie like me, then I've got some classes for you. This summer, we are going to have something called Sassy SLA, or Linguistics 101 for teachers. I think it's June 23rd. I forget exactly when it is, but I'll tell you that surprise a little bit later. But there's something you need to know about called the orders of acquisition. There have been lots of studies that show that people generally acquire certain linguistic forms in a certain order. So we should be following them because it's just going to naturally work with your brain really well. And it has a lot to do with the frequency of how much those words are said. So for example, English language learners, both babies and second language learners, they are going to pick up past tense phrases, regular past tense phrases, like the whole ED thing, like I picked up. They pick up that before they'll pick up the word pick, third person singular. Picked up. They'll pick that up first before the word pick, like, oh, I pick up. And, or third person, I should say, he or she picks up. Babies and second language learners of English, they will learn the word picked first before they will learn the word picks, the third person singular, because it is more often said in speech. So that third person S really trips up English language learners, even though it's present tense and even though it's a regular form. And also before irregular present tense verbs. Spanish has a little bit of a similar structure. So stay tuned for that SLA class this summer if you're into that, because we're going to talk all about it. I saw the same thing with my son after I learned about it. As he turned 3, he started saying the S's on the ends of words, but he was able to speak in past tense for a long time before he could do any of the other things. So keep that in mind, that grammar acquisition, and what that just means is all the functional chunks, like that's messy. It's very messy. It does not follow a really neat little line of how things fit on a chart. So we need to try and reflect that more in our curriculums as much as we can, just because it's going to make class a lot easier for us, because we're going to be following what's actually going on in our students' brains. Those are the ones that I have for you. Now let me take a look at what we got here so that I can see what we got for our people. Oh, Calle 13. Me encanta. That's a good one. Oh, okay. Anne, I see your comment about indigenous cultures in your foreign colonial language. I am so glad that you asked about this, because other French teachers feel the same way. The family's coming back in. Other French teachers feel the same way, that it is very hard to find good resources to teach about indigenous cultures in French language. Very much so. You are not alone in this. I completely agree. It's way easier to find resources for Quechua, for Zapotecas, for all that. And I feel you on that. I need you to look up, as soon as this class is over, look up my friend Pav, who's going to teach you all about where you can find really good resources on the beauty and majesty of indigenous cultures, especially in Canada. She is a Canadian teacher who teaches French, and she has a lot of amazing resources for you. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I send you a message after here, and I will get you her name, because she's a wizard on that. This January, her and she did a conference presentation, and it was an interview. It was so good, about rethinking representation in French class, and her focus on that was especially indigenous cultures. You're going to love it. Every change in government is when you feel changes in communication and your curriculum goals. That's for real. Focus on communication. Oh, Jennifer, I'm glad you asked this question. What is around a novel? So if you're familiar with using CI novels, like little readers, do I have one nearby? I think I do. Okay, so we've got this, Femme va en Californie. Like, this is a little reader that's made for French learners, and it's all in French. But this one is my favorite one. Speaking of representation and indigenous cultures, Qui parle français, this talks about different Francophone leaders from around the world and how amazing they are. And they're readers made by other French teachers, and of course, Spanish, Chinese, German, Italian, all the things. I did a whole class on this. If you would like this, I'll get you the link. It's really, really good. But they're made in very simple language, especially for language learners. They're great. And a lot of people organize their curriculums around them, kind of like you would in an English class. That's a really good question. Okay. Y'all have so many comments. This is awesome. I'm going to try and get to all these. Constantly changing is true. Organization, not vocab. Yeah, that's the thing. Okay. Virginia, number 6. Yes, we as a whole staff are working on the idea that every day there should be diversity, not look at this today only. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, I love that, Anne. That's a really great way to start with that. J'ai trouvé and j'ai oublié. I found and I forgot. Those are great phrases to start off with on the beginning. Zoom is great for screen sharing to get connected. Yes, very good. Oh, and commands. I'm glad you said that. Commands are a great way to start off. All right, I'm going to go through these comments here, and I want you to think about this too and add in the comments here. So we're at the end of class now. Put in the comments. Let's get at them. It's action time. So what are the curriculum mistakes that you're making? I've made all of them. That's why I know what the mistakes are. I've made all of them. And what are you going to do this week? Even if it's only one thing. It might be looking up PAV and seeing if you can find better resources for your classroom that have more representation and diversity of missing narratives in your classroom. That's a great way to start. Research, SLA, yes, all the SLA love. Where to get those readers. Jennifer, I'll get you a whole class on that. I have a whole class on where you can find all those things. So I will put that in the comments for you. But my absolute favorite website is Fluency Matters. I think you're going to love that. All right, so y'all, time to get busy now. Tell me, what are you going to do this week? Put it in the comments so that you can stay accountable for it. What are you going to do this week? Pick one thing. Pick one thing so that we know. What's one thing? And then here's where we need to move forward from here. What's next? Okay, y'all. So this is the first of many. We only really touched the surface of a lot of things with curriculum. This is something that is a very large topic that affects everybody and is obviously huge. So here's where you can go from here. The first thing that I want you to do, if you haven't already done so, and I'm going to leave it in the comments below, is go to lalibrelanguagelearning.com/Wednesday. And you'll get the whole schedule. Y'all, we have 13 classes. This is one of 13. And you can see all the different things that we're going to be doing. Next week, same place, slightly different time. It's going to be a little bit later next week because little E over there, he might need glasses. So we're going to go to the doctor and check it out. But after we come back, we're going to do common level 1 curriculum mistakes. So we're going to focus and do a real deep dive on just level 1. The next thing I want you to do is, remember that South Carolina curriculum I told you about that I worked on with a team of 80 other brilliant teachers? Go check it out so that you can use it in your classroom and maybe it'll give you some ideas. That curriculum is completely free. It is K through 12. It is immersion elementary for all languages, all the way up to middle and high school, including Latin. It's got everything. And it's completely free for all educators to use and look at. And it's a unit outline with a structure, an IPA for every single unit, as well as 4 lesson samples in between. I know, because it was grueling. It took a long time to put together. It's really good though. Follow that URL to get to it. lalibrelanguagelearning.com/SC. And I have a little surprise bonus for you. Follow me on Instagram at lalibrelanguagelearning because tomorrow I'm going to be doing a Q&A at 2 p.m. with all of your curriculum questions. So get excited. We're going to have some fun. All right, y'all. Let me see. We got it. I will look up high frequency verbs. Yes, I will get you on that. I will help you with that. We can talk about that more tomorrow. You are so welcome, Virginia. Thanks for hanging out with me. Do you have any suggestions for, oh, I already answered that. Okay. Dr. Seuss book in Spanish. Good idea, Jane. Just make sure it's the right one. I've made them all. Had to fight for resources that aren't grammar based, and we've all been there. We've all been there. Interested in readers too. Oh, Jennifer, you're so welcome. My students need the connecting words. Ooh, that's a good idea. We should talk more about connecting words because that is a thing. Y'all, that is what I have for you. I hope that you have an amazing rest of your Wednesday. And thank you so much for being here with me in my class. And I can't wait to see you next Wednesday. Same time? No, not the same time. 5:30, same place, Wednesday. And we're going to dive into all things level 1. Are you going to be there? Or are you going to be there? I'll see you then. Bye, y'all.